Hello, you're very welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. I'm Shane, that's Daragh.
Hello.
This is number 56, and we're going to be headlining the show with our review segment of the Super Rugby Final that happened last weekend. After that, then we're going to look ahead to the international rugby this weekend, which is Fiji taking on the Maori All Blacks in Suva, which is going to be a great game and a great occasion. So we'll be breaking that down and looking at both squads. And then we'll look at some of the action from the Women's Super Series as well.
Just getting super interesting.
It is, very much so. Lots of really good, juicy fixtures and surprise results that have happened so far. So,
always, yeah. And in fact, there's a game in that series going on right now between England and France as we're shooting this on Wednesday evening. We're getting updates. I believe France are in the lead, and probably by the time we get to that segment, we'll know what happened, and we'll do our best to look it up and find out. But that's recorded. We're going to watch it once we're done we're done shooting the show. But it's another juicy fixture. It's been a great tournament, and we'll be delving into that later on in the show. And then I think wrapping up with before our news segment at the end, we actually have a brief segment on some of the new law changes that are being proposed that we're going to kind of break down and talk through and discuss what we like and what we don't like.
Some good, some bad in that.
Yeah.
And then, as I say, we'll wrap up with the news at the very end. So, that's the show. Stick with us. If you're new here, please like and subscribe if you do enjoy, and give the little bell icon a ring to let you know when we're uploading again. Without any more ado at all, we'll go back and look back comments.
Yeah.
So with a little bit more ado, so with only a little bit more ado,
you got to get those YouTube terms on, your likes and your subs and your comments. And there's another thing, but I can't for the life of me remember what it is.
No, it's fine. But one thing I do remember is that the Super Rugby Final happened at the weekend.
Oh, it didn't all.
Me oh my! It was a Crusaders slam. It was the 3 in a row, and it was a very, very impressive shutout of probably the most dangerous looking team in the tournament this year.
Yeah.
So it was a champion performance from the champions. And
it was like it was an old school game of finals footy in the Dew in Christchurch, and one of the things that we had factored in was we did talk about the element that home advantage was going to give, and I actually think that you can't say that the Jags were affected by sort of jet lag or travel or illness or depletion in that way. I mean, they were very physically there for the fight.
Yeah, the pack was impressive.
They looked sharp. They were playing like they've been playing all season, but just that little bit of dew and that little bit of more wintry conditions that the Christchurch game had. It was a clear night, but there was a wet ball.
You could see the damp in the air nearly through the screen.
That definitely impacted them. But no, first and foremost, you have to talk about how good the Crusaders were.
Mighty Crusaders, they've earned their reputation as the scariest side in that competition for quite a good reason, and it's just they're very intimidating to play against.
Themselves and Saracens are the most organised club machines that are going on in the world right now, and they're playing just some inspired,
really good rugby. Like even things like the way Enor went in the centre with the way with Crotty jumping out, and then just the massive defensive undertaking that those boys had to do with a combination that's not as tried and true and tried and trusted, and good Hugh slotting inside them, and it just worked really well. They were shutting down what was a very, very impressive attacking side that did have a lot of ball and created a lot of chances, and were definitely, despite the scoreline 19-3 obviously it finished, which is clear daylight between the sides, but there were moments where the Jags created those chances and just couldn't get them down. Those wingers, those wingers are having a great game, but for the one bounce of a ball or one revolution of a ball, it just wasn't there for them.
There's no question, the Crusaders didn't have it all their own way. But one of the key difference makers, I thought, and we spoke about last week, the sort of even just aesthetic difference from a viewpoint of Quesada alone in his coaching box, and then the Crusaders with their almost team full of coaches, almost like 15 guys in the back room looking over things. And I think you really did see the attention to detail that the Crusaders have. I mean, they were ready for everything that the Jags threw at them with ball in hand. And now, while Matera with a few classy plays did get a little purchase on George Bridges' wing and put it wasn't Moyano, it was Maroney through on that side a few times, but for the most part they were shutting it down, and there were a few excellent sequences of play where the Crusaders just knew exactly what they were doing. They were shooting from the outside in, they maintained their width, but they shot, and then they anticipated the chip through and backed Bryn Hall to cover it, and he did it on a fair few occasions, and it was just, it played out like the Crusaders defense coach would have drawn it up in the room. They knew exactly where the Jags were going to go. They were ready for it, and there were a good few chances that rather than the Jags just missing them, there were an awful lot of cases where they just couldn't break down the Crusaders D, and that was where Crusaders were most impressive. I mean, they probably got the edge of the forward battle. They definitely owned the scrum. Had some issues at line out time. But the biggest difference is when the Jags had the ball, they were outstanding. And actually, Crusaders were probably at their weakest when they themselves had the ball. They were a little bit error strewn. They did end up getting the clinical scores, but it was their overall game management that was most impressive, and that the Jags, for all of their flair, didn't really have as rounded a game you would need to go over there and win against a Crusaders side in the final.
Yes, indeed, which is as rounded a team as they come in that competition, because normally you're looking at sides that have great potential somewhere but are also, there are huge deficits all around compared to the Crusaders, where it feels like, and we've even mentioned this in terms of how they often don't get the reflection in the All Blacks camp, as they obviously do have good representation, but it often feels like there are a few hard cases that you could make always in terms of omissions, because you're just looking at the Crusaders be awesome all year, but it's one of those ones where just collectively, more so the team as an organised unit just performs exemplary. It's less about individuality in it, because the team is so organised and so focused on what an opposition side coming there, the detail that, like you say, that goes into studying and breaking down what they have to bring, means that the Crusaders paint many pictures over the course of the season in completely different ways. Like against certain teams, you're thinking like the Rebels earlier on, then they do showcase their ball in hand and run in a load of tries against that team, as well as shutting them out comprehensively. But it's just like, and then in oppositions that are a bit more physical than that, they don't mind going there to discourage them as well, like taking on a few mauls when it really isn't often their game, just to kind of get that psychological edge. They have all these kind of little nuances that are part of the game.
That Steve Hansen element to them, where they feel that they can take on a team at their own game, but it is a dangerous game, and it can get caught, like the All Blacks last November trying to take Ireland on up front, playing Ireland where they're at their most comfortable.
And England even the week before. It was a curious, it felt like playing their own game would have been probably wiser course.
But that's what I like so much about the Crusaders coaching ticket, is that they've gone a step beyond, and they looked at that Jags game and they thought, how are we going to take this game to a place where the Jags aren't going to be able to win it? And the conditions certainly helped, but they played a tight game. They owned the kicking game. Richie Mo'unga again, just another
putting his hand up. Well, it's not his hand has been up for the last 2 years.
It was another just very solid performance, and you saw the holes then in the kicking game from Cabelli and Diaz-Bonilla, who, like, both of them had some very poor kicks, and just generally speaking, They literally kicked the ball, I don't know how many times, but plenty of times. I'm sure some stats men will tell you exactly how many, but they had literally one successful kick, I think, which was Buffelli in the second half, and nothing came of it, but he had it up and under Rob Kearney style that he booted down and then gathered, and he hadn't really been in the game up until that point. It was just at the start of the second half, and he did get in it a bit more and probably needed to be in it a bit more, but generally speaking, that exit strategy from the Jags just wasn't good enough, and so they were having to work really hard to get out of their territory. And even in those early exchanges, I know ultimately the Jags had more possession, you felt like the Crusaders were already making them do a lot of work. And not in the areas they want to, like things like a Buffelli being frozen out. That's not the picture that the Jags wanted off in the first half. Having a quiet outside back who's quite a talisman for you, that's much more the Crusaders' idea than the Jags. And it was just a great example of them doing things exactly right and taking the danger men out of the game, shifting the focus, making them play from deep a bit more often. And some of those exit kicks were hideous, to be honest. We didn't even draw attention to that, but Cabelli has been guilty of that on occasion. When it's not going well, loose and just random nonsense kicks do come out. In the second half, Diaz-Bonilla was exactly the same. There were some shockers straight to Havili and the Crusaders back three, it was totally a losing picture. So the kicking game was massive for the Crusaders, and actually the scrum as well was huge. In the second half, that was the big penalty generator that was moving the Crusaders Crusaders down the pitch. Just whenever the game was breaking up, there was a scrum, and more often than not, a Crusaders penalty was coming from it.
Yeah, it's very tough to win in that, with that being the circumstance for any team. When a scrum gets that level of dominance, normally that's the winning of the game.
And this is a concern for Argentina ahead of the World Cup. For Ledesma, like, he needs a tight head who can lock down a scrum big time.
Because there's not one. There hasn't been. That's been the 1 weekling. Like, looking at the Jags team when it was named a few years ago as a pro, like, you're thinking this is absolute fire. But where are the props these days? Like, and considering that is the traditional strength more so, like, we are like in the more modern iteration of Argentinian rugby, I'm associating with wingers and wonderful footballing play. But it's not to forget that where they came from is like that monster pack that no one wanted to scrum down against. And like Mike Ross in his book has a little passage on just how tough it used to be to face the Argentinian scrum and how they used to spearhead it through the hooker a bit more, and they had a
Marcus Gersa, and you're thinking of, and Ledesma, even they're proper elite level props. And nowadays they're really getting bullied very often. And while Joe Moody is a good scrummager, he's test level,
but he's not as destructive as some of the massive
well, indeed, like, I mean, they're going to have to scrummage against Mako Vunipola at the World Cup. Like that, like if I'm Ledesma ahead of the World Cup, I'm thinking I need a tight head who can lock down my scrum, and I need to pick Nicolas Sanchez. Now they've drafted him back into the squad from Europe. They need to pick Nicolas Sanchez, and they really need him to hit the form of his life, because when he is on form, he's up there with those. He belongs in the conversation with your Sextons and your Farrells and your Barretts and your Molangas and Pollards now. But when he's off, he can be a little flaky. And I think for the picture to come together for Argentina, I think you saw in this Jags team a lot of what they can do and how great they are, and then you saw in this final where it's going to fall short. Hopefully they can solve those two problems. But from the Crusaders' perspective, it was very positive, and very positive broader, even from an All Black perspective, just because I thought two guys in Sam Whitelock and Matt Todd, who have big reputations but had been stuttering a little bit in the run into the season, certainly not putting in the performances you'd associate with them. They were massive.
Matt Todd especially. So that turnover play that led to the try, wasn't it? Which was Whitelock streaking up the wing. That was an awesome play. And like a proper number 7 and getting in the middle of that messy maul and coming away with the ball.
I tell you, rewatching that game, I mean, just with the 7 head on me, it was a day for flankers. Sure, Pablo Matera got man of the match, but if he didn't, it could have gone to Matt Todd. Everything he was doing, like, this is what you talk about your issue with the likes of Sam Cane and Artie Sevilla. Artie Sevilla has been great this year, but just those little plays and Matt Todd is just full of them, that just make everything harder at the ruck for the opposition. And he was just full of them. He was at every ruck in offense. Whenever there was a sniff of a turnover, he was coming in. On defense, in the defensive breakdown, I don't know how many times it was like 7-0, but there was always enough there that the ball was scrambling, and he was just constant.
Being a nuisance, which is exactly the job description of your number 7.
Very effective.
It does annoy me when you get like people picking big ball carrying players as 7s instead, because it's completely not what the position's for. They do have a more breakdowny and a more loose ball carrying tackling flanker in South Africa, but they pack down as left flank and right flank, so it's a little different over there. And I think 6 tends to be more open side over there. You'd often see Francois Lowe wear 6, which is even though he's a quintessential 7 in my eyes, and in terms of the definition I'm just putting forward. But Matt Todd was writing the book on it in that game. He really was. It was a picture of really good, like, just playing like the most annoying player for the opposition, particularly the opposition scrum half. Like, I just makes it an absolute nightmare. And I remember, like, I used to play in scrum half, and it was your worst nightmare when a 7 was on it, as Matt Todd was, because it just makes everything slower, more sloppy. Means that you have to commit or try and get more of your forwards to commit to rucks just to clean it up, which means there are fewer men out wide, and it's still slower. And meanwhile, as well as that, the 10 is getting hounded off every scrum
as well. And exactly, there was this Matt Todd. It was a perfect 7s performance, and he, like we said last week on the show, kind of needs a big game.
That we were saying that was one thing that had to come good for the, because they lost. We Scott Barrett was out, and the centres were going to be missing their talisman in Crotty, and there was a lot of disjointedness, and we were saying it would be very helpful for Matt Todd to step up and be a senior man making massive plays from the 7 shirt, and that's exactly what happened.
And Sam Whitelock as well was a really great enforcer from the row, and had loads of class subtle touches himself.
He's a wonderful
as well
footballer.
as just the like this front row from the Crusaders scrimmaged well, but they scrimmaged really well as an 8th, and the second row was massive in that as well. I think actually the reason, I'd be curious to ask, but I think the reason Dunshee came straight in ahead of Romano might have been that scrummaging lockdown, because they obviously saw it as an area that they could attack, and really an area where they had clear dominance over the Jags, and that came to fruition big time. And certainly it was
quite a French even approach to doing the scrum for penalties and get some position, and there's wisdom in it. It was clever and it worked, and while it keeps working, it's a good way to just suck the life out of it. A visiting team, a travelling team, you're just having to scrum down and then penalty and have to march back towards your own line, and then we do a line out.
I get the impression, this is sort of more big picture talk ahead of the World Cup, but I get the impression that if the All Blacks are to win the World Cup this year, because we know things have narrowed down, and the idea of them just being an unstoppable attacking force is somewhat diminished, but it's gonna be, if they win it this year, it's gonna be kind of like that. It's gonna be defensive nous and chops, really great technical forward play, playing the game in the right areas in the right ways, figuring out their opposition, and then in tight games where they figured out how to shut down their opposition when the chance comes, showing their class. And that's
what's funny actually about how Scott Robertson was talking about what Ronan O'Gara brought, because he's only been there for 2 years, and they've fundamentally changed their approach to defence since then. Like, it used to be watch the ball. What used to watch the man. So it was man-to-man coverage, not watching the ball. And then they completely opposite.
Completely did for the Chiefs though, that man-to-man tactic. The first year that they were the Chiefs were the big rivals.
But it meant that they were covering all the passing lanes.
Exactly, all the tracking runs. It works really well in New Zealand as a style, because there's so many tracking runners that they really all need to be followed. And actually, you can see Northern Hemisphere Ds get caught by that sometimes, just ball watching, and then all of a sudden there's 2 or 3 guys on the inside who aren't being followed. But
conversely, and it seems to make a bit more of a sense out of it, just in terms of just cohesive unit defending, to watch the ball and all be aware of it. But it's an interesting innovation, because they were always a defensively sound team anyway prior to that, but just see their approach change, flip 180 and go a different way. They're a constant learning machine that is a brain's trust, and it is kind of like we were building this last year or last week as like kind of the end of that era, or the end of this era, because
Scott Robertson is red hot favourite
for the All Blacks job now after, and how could he not be 3 Super Rugby titles in a row? So he more than likely will be gone. Ron O'Gara is definitely gone. Brad Moore is definitely gone. So that's already a healthy chunk.
Not to mention,
ticket.
If Scott Robertson gets the All Blacks job, there's every chance he'll take a couple of guys
with him as part of the backroom staff, very likely. So that'll all be that as well as some key retiring players moving on as well. So it is very good that they secured 3 in a row and got that legacy, because they are worthy of it, and it's been undeniable all the last 3 years just that the Crusaders are on a different level, different planet, and it was even exacerbated more, highlighted more in the last 2 years rather than this one, when there were things like the Aussie teams being off a cliff, and the discrepancy, and so like some of the Aussie conference being way below, like the top of the Aussie conference being behind all of the New Zealand conference,
which was less true this year
by far, and there were more competitive games and more teams have improved overall. Things like even though it's come at the expense of the Western Force, but the Rebels being improved from just the whipping boys that they always were, that obviously helps a bit as well. And the Jags have been invaluable this season in colouring it in a completely different way and offering a new contender rather than just the scramble being the Kiwi Conference and one of those teams is going to win it, which is what we were pretty much getting for the last 2 years, assuming it's like, well, Crusaders are sitting pretty atop of it, so they're probably going to win again. And it's like, maybe the Hurricanes might do for them, but they're going to have to go to Christchurch. They probably won't. So it was fun that it was just a completely new challenger, a new rival to emerge. I hope it is just that, and a new rival to carry on, and hope the Jags continue this upward spiral. It would help if Argentina can have a bit of good stuff coming
between
the World Cup.
The World Cups, that's the thing. But there's no question that it's been great this year, and it's been an unreal Crusaders team that are about to move on. I just think last point before we move on from it, but it's good big picture thought. It's just that the aesthetic of the game and the aesthetic of more of these games does have more of a Northern Hemisphere feel to it.
Yeah,
The games between South and North are no longer looking like different worlds.
Yes, which was true going into the 2015 World Cup, that it was just like, it was a crazy thing, and it felt like there was very myopic kind of viewing coming from mainly from the Northern Hemisphere, going like deluded stuff about how the Six Nations is the greatest comp in the world, and just not giving the Southern Hemisphere its due at all, but also playing a very slow, bludgeoning, not incisive, not really in the spirit of rugby kind of game, and getting caught out and found out in that World Cup, which is the global rugby experiment that happens every 4 years, when we decide how is this game played in the here and now at the best to the best of our ability. And it seems that little dichotomy that did exist between northern and southern hemisphere has dwindled somewhat, and you've seen that in the last few years, like that example of the All Blacks coming up to play like England and then Ireland, and playing a slightly different kind of more Northern Hemisphere style of game, a lot more kicking, a lot more defending, a lot less of what makes the All Blacks the All Blacks. And then conversely, support lines have flooded into the European game, and now up into the Six Nations, with Scotland being excellent proponents of it in the Six Nations, just contributing that, I think, but also the resurgent France trying a bit more of that too. But then I think
primarily the big game changers in Europe have been Scotland for one, just in terms of bringing that attacking dimension and getting Northern Hemisphere teams used to playing at that pace. And then my second would be Saracens, just because of what they've done with the ball, the incredible shape and detail that they've brought to their attack.
But I think there are more than that. There's things like the inclusion of the South African teams in the Pro 14 adds that other dimension, that other pace, and just that other track to what was previously the Celtic League, where like if it's a rainy weekend in Ireland, it's going to be a rainy weekend across that whole region, so you're just going to see a load of 6-3s. But now you're not, because there's one of the games is happening down in Cheetahs territory and something
hot summer in Bloemfontein,
indeed, and it's like, fast track and 40 points to 30 points kind of game. So it's the teams have understand the value of attack and the value of tries. So you've seen even teams that are traditionally quite defensive, things like the evolution of Connacht under Pat Lam. All of this has come really post that World Cup in terms of the speed of the game collectively across the board, and even the top couture this year was faster because of Toulouse's resurgence. Was just a faster game all around. So it's like comparing both sides of the equator, feels like we're all playing the same game now.
Exactly.
And it's
coaching has got more detailed. Everybody is watching every game. Everyone worth their salt is keeping their toes in what's going on everywhere.
Indeed.
And so we are getting more of a homogenized idea of what the game is, and therefore the proposition of a Northern Hemisphere winner of the World Cup is, I would say, much more likely than it was 4 years ago. Not to say that New Zealand and South Africa aren't 1 and 2, because for my money that they are. But
you're saying the gulf has probably narrowed a little, and that's for the best. But the one thing that is true is that in terms of gulf, the Crusaders are still sitting pretty atop of the Super Rugby pecking order. And sure, there'll be a lot of moving parts and a lot of things to change next year. So who knows if they'll be able to recapture the heights of the last 3 years? It remains to be seen. But congratulations to them.
Now is the time to revel in it.
It's just an awesome team. It's one of the best teams ever.
The Decima.
Yes, that's the other one, the 10th ever, which is like they don't do stars, but I don't even know how it would feasibly work on the jersey.
That's 10 in 24 seasons of Super Rugby.
That's awesome.
So something tells me that franchise will be okay.
I think
Scott Robertson and post Kieran Reid, that there is an institution of excellence going on over there, and they're well worth it. And massive congrats and love and respect to the Jags as well for bringing so much to the competition. And now for those boys, it becomes about Argentina, and it becomes about test footy,
and taking that Jags form into the Rugby Championship and beyond is exactly it. So well done the Crusaders, and wish them well.
Absolutely. And on that note of moving on to test footy,
the first
it's not quite test footy.
Is it a test? Is it actually? No, it's not a full test. Maori, but it's Fiji v the Maori.
I'm excited about this game.
It's great.
Fiji are playing the New Zealand Maori this week. It's a double header. So they're playing this week. I don't know about local time, but Greenwich Mean Time, it's 4 a.m. on Saturday morning. And unfortunately broadcast on ESPN Scrum, which is a subscription service. So you know, hoping to somehow access it in some
pops
way.
up on Facebook Live or something would be nice.
That'd be nice, but I
yeah.
don't suspect that it will. But anyway, if there is a means, if you have the means to watch it, it will definitely be a fun game to take a look at. I'm super excited about it. First week is taking place in Suva in ANZ Stadium, and then next week they're bringing it to Rotorua in New Zealand.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think
so a little 2-match series between Fiji
I expect
and the
some
Maori.
fun footy. Judging by who's included on both, like looking at both panels, there's danger all over. One of the funnier things is that Fiji have brought, like, is it 8 props that they've named in their squad? Which leads me to believe that it's all World Cup focus in mind, and they just don't know what the front row is.
Well, this
currently.
is a broad squad that they've named, that John McKee has named. Very smart guy, John McKee. Now, he's lost his defence coach, which is a blow, but he's still... there was an interview with him done by FijiRugby.com where he was saying they're still very much prioritising defence at this stage in their prep. But yeah, everything that...
Well, it's what won that game in Paris.
It is, yeah. Everything that they're doing right now is tailored towards defence, and they have picked a broad squad, which is for this two-match series, and then the Pacific Nations Cup, which is to be played in Suva as well, which will also be a great occasion. It's fantastic to see some rugby being brought to this region, and hopefully the locals get out and support it on
I'm sure they will. Yeah. It's a 19,000 seater, isn't it?
Yes,
It's like a lovely size for this kind of contest. Hopefully it'll be colourful and there'll be a bit of noise, and I'm sure the rugby will be absolutely class. I can see that you have the little weather forecast that it's with 94% humidity and quite a chance of rain, potential showers throughout, but 40 kph winds as well means there might be some crazy kicking, but I don't know if
so windy, humid, potentially wet, 24 degrees, so it could be a mad old game.
It could be error strewn, but if there are a load of scrums, that might help Fiji, because they're trying to look, judging by looking at all these props.
Their props,
and also of all the points in the Maori lineup, I actually think the front row is probably where they're weakest. I think throughout all of them, the Maori are always a dangerous team anyway, but I actually think the front row is a little bit weak this time. So there's potential inroads here. I don't know. Like, my history leads me to believe that the Maori would win this game. They
Maori have some defeats on their books as well. They can pull it off, and then they can pull it out. I'll
be rooting for Fiji though.
Oh, totally. Well, I think this is, like, it's not. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to define Fiji's season in any way. But it's an important little 2-match series for them. They haven't played a full Test international since the win in Paris. Since then, it's kind of been all bad news. They had the Ndolo and Nagusa in the same week, retiring ahead of the World Cup. They had widespread rumours and reports coming out that players from the South Sea Islands, Samoans and Tongans as well, were being sort of intimidated by European clubs to not play in the World Cup. We haven't seen any other guys other than those 2 Montpellier guys pull out yet, and hopefully we won't. They have their squad now. And then there was obviously that horrible news that their defence coach had to leave because they couldn't afford to pay him, which is obviously sucks, and once again reinforces the game being about the haves and the have-nots, as it were, which is no good. But Fiji, like, even with all that dirt that's come since then, they know they have a really good team.
Sure.
They know they have as talented a squad as any of the top tier teams, genuinely. Some top class Test players who are playing professional footy with the best in the world. They know
and they're always the talisman in their team, pretty much all of them to a man, or whichever club they're with, they're the go-to Fijian guy who's creating all the chances.
We're going to get a good sense of where their heads are at and where they're at over the next few weeks in this 2-match series, and then in the Pacific Nations Cup. I'm very much looking forward to see a refreshed Phil Mata now. Edinburgh haven't played a game in forever. He was looking tired towards the end of the season.
He was being asked to do quite a lot of work.
He's going to be back at home. He's going to be playing with Leone Nakarawa, which is going to be fun for him. A bit of a departure from Tulis.
I love seeing Radradra in the centres for them. Is always one of my favourite players in Fiji as well. I think he's just a quality operator.
They could also, we don't know their team, we just have their squad, but they could throw Gonova in there. They could throw Gonova anywhere. He's
listed as a winger, but they're all interchangeable. You could probably play him a prop as well. And similarly, some of those props could probably talk out in the wing. Like
Josh Matavesi as well as a really classy player. They have decisions to make at 9 whether they're going to go for Frank Lamani or Nico Matawalu. Matawalu can also play in the wing.
It's true. That is another one. Ben Vulavula, fullback /10.
Ben Vulavola's going to be their 10.
He will be their 10, of course.
For the lack of another 10. And like, listen, a season at Racing with Finn Russell, like that's going to have helped him.
For sure. Yeah,
it's going to have helped his game come
on. The style of game that Racing play actually is quite Fijian in essence. Like, they do throw the ball around sometimes quite loosely, and
it's his kicking game that worries me. I mean, he does kick, he does go there sometimes,
but it's just a little loose.
It's all a bit as Diaz Bonilla was at the weekend, just loose and not quite accurate enough. And
some floaty ones, some dangerous ones that are inviting trouble.
It's all the little things that they're going to have to get right when Wales and Australia and Georgia are to be played in the World Cup. Like those, this is the time to sort of iron out those creaks. They're in a figuring-outy kind of place in terms of what they're going to do with their squad as well. I mean, Yato, Nagusa, Mata in that
that's
back
a great
row.
Back row already. But then there are other options there too.
There are other options there as well, and then obviously Nakarawa's the talisman. He's going to be in there.
Sure. It's just a who's who of class footballers from all over the world, but they're all from Fiji. They pop up in every league, but they're always class, and they're always just such talisman for their respective teams that it's impossible to think that they won't be dangerous come World Cup time. And even right now, like, potentially could storm this one if it's in Suva as well. Like, there's a potential for a disjointed look to both sides, because both sides are starting out in their season, but also the Maori are always a little bit hodgepodge in terms of the structure and even in terms of the style of play. It's a bit inconsistent, but Fiji just have to deal with gathering everyone in from everywhere and trying to make it cohesive by the time they're playing their first game, which is what this is.
That's great. It's what's great is that they're going to have this 2-match series now in July. They're at the end of July going into August. They got the Pacific Nations Cup, and they can ease off and get ready for the World Cup in September. I mean, they're going to be as prepared as a Fiji team has ever been, and this is going to be a great little first side of that. Standing in their way in terms of the actual match, that there is a decent Maori side. Serious options at scrum half for Uru and Bryn Hall and Te Tuhora.
All arguably unlucky to be missing out on all black nods.
I tell you, Rob Thompson as well, and even Sean Stevenson and Wainui from the Chiefs have been in flying form. So there's potential for that to all click. I mean, there's potential for just passes to stick and things to go very right. I don't know about Ottery Black, who I feel will get the nod at 10. It's like a bit of a step down from the Ehia West days for the Maori.
True, maybe. Well, he's not a terrible player at all. Ottery Black's a very fine footballer, but there. Some areas I'm worried more about, like, just the front row is going to look as Ash Dixon's going to get the nod probably at hooker, I'd say, but
Nathan Harris
for the Chiefs is a serious player, but then Tyrrell Lomax, Frank, Ben May, Renata and White, like they're decent players, but they're certainly not a destructive force.
No, I don't know that the game will be decided there.
It doesn't. You wouldn't think so. Like, just judging by the identity of these two teams, that I doubt it'll go there. But it's more just the fact that if it does rain and it's the first game of the season and maybe they are a bit disjointed, it could end up being a fair few scrums, and it could be a factor.
There's little things, dynamics at play here for the for the Maori as well ahead of the World Cup. Obviously, if things go wrong, if there's a couple of injuries, guys like Elliot Dixon and Akira Ioane and Bryn Hall, all of those scrum halves, even Rob Thompson, they're going to think, I have an outside chance of maybe getting a call up for the World Cup if I do well here. This won't hurt my chances if I do well here. Wetu Douglas is a mad one to see in that squad after coming off playing in the final last week.
That's true, I don't know, will he get the nod for this week?
Not.
Maybe
Rotorua's game. There's all kinds of cool matchups, and I just expect to see a great game of attacking footy in a great stadium with a great crowd, where we're going to get to watch a lot of rugby over the next month or so, because the whole Pacific Nations will be played out there as well.
Which I think is a great spot for it.
So I'm just buzzing, and this is the first sort of genuinely pre-World Cup kind of game. This is the sort of pre-season opener to the run into the World Cup, which is going to be backed up in a couple of weeks' time by the Pacific Nations Cup, next week by the Rugby Championship, which we're going to get into. Very, very exciting. Domestic rugby is
it's basically we've switched focus, and it's World Cup time now, because the Crusaders are champs, and that's all it's taking.
This is This is the rugby players' Christmas, except it only comes once every 4 years.
Oh yeah.
So get excited, folks. This is the beginning of it.
Yes.
What a way to start. This is going to be a very fun game.
If
you
is,
have the means to
good
watch
advertisement for the game, which is what you want.
If you have the means to watch it, please do. I'll do my best to track it down.
World Rugby should be broadcasting it. So,
well, if ESPN gave them the money for the rights, that's that.
I know. But yeah, no, I'm excited for it, and I'm curious to see what teams. We don't have the teams, we just have the squads, and it's one of those ones with both sides that there's just, you can pick
such options,
many different combinations. So I'll be curious to see what they end up going with, and then how it ends up going. I'm gonna back Fiji ultimately
at
to
home.
Get it done.
Yeah, and probably possibly over the series as well.
Yeah,
but I think they do have big questions to answer given what's happened since that French game. But if they can play anywhere close to their potential, they have a really good shot at not just this series, not just the Pacific Nations Cup, but a World Cup quarter-final, and then who knows.
And maybe in any given game they can beat teams, like they showed that in Paris. They've showed it in World Cups before. Ask Wales about it.
2007.
And like they're just, it's only their lack of resources and the kind of the odds being stacked against them as far as funding is what kind of keeps them down. But talent-wise, you're right in saying that they have more natural talent than pretty much any other team per capita.
Per capita, that's just
like something like 1 in 4 men are rugby players, professional rugby players.
It certainly seems that way.
Crazy. Like they're awesome. I kind of love the idea of. I've never been to Fiji, but I love the idea of like mammies and daddies, the older heads, just sitting around having a chat about where their sons are. Oh, my son's in Toulon. Like, oh, mine's in Edinburgh. Mine's actually now playing in America. It's like, yes,
I'm sure those conversations.
I'm sure they do. Yeah.
But now they're all coming home.
Yeah.
For the month leading into the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, the trip to Japan is certainly far from the worst trip those boys have to take.
Mm-hmm.
They're together as a camp now in the South Pacific for the next month. They are going to have to go next week to Rotorua in New Zealand, but then back to Fiji, playing a whole tournament out at home in Fiji with their families, back in business, everyone together, and then going up to Japan as a squad and playing there in the World Cup.
It's as good a run-in and preparation as you could really hope for a tier 2 side.
They have a chance. They have a real chance of making a quarter-final. Mark my words, as McGregor would say.
Yeah, you're thinking Wales need to watch out.
I'm thinking Wales need to watch out. I'm thinking Australia need to watch out. Those are two beatable tiers. This is not like the All Blacks and England are in their group.
Yeah,
they're gettable, atable, both of those sides, by some Fijian madness.
Yeah, some Fijian madness can be just the exact thing to bring prescriptive play just to its knees when it all sticks, and it's
could be Gatland kryptonite.
It could be, yet we don't know yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm excited to see it now, and this is a good little curtain raiser for it, just to see where they're at, because the last time we saw them, they were the best I've ever seen them, which was in Paris. So that's exciting times. Hopefully.
Totally. Yeah, we're moving on now to the Women's Rugby Super Series, and I'm actually just going to look up super quickly, because as we're filming, England are playing France.
surely finished now, because it was half time before we started shooting, so I assume that's all decided. France were ahead, but I'll just run through the other scores, because the other games that happened since we last talked about it were France got the job done against New Zealand.
That was
the Black Ferns fell to 25-16 to France. And England narrowly got past Canada. This Canada team are serious. They're great.
Seriously physical.
They're Packer monsters.
Unfortunately, I missed that game. I did get to watch the France New Zealand game, Black Ferns game live. And France, like, having been beaten by Canada and out-muscled by Canada, they weren't going to be out-muscled again. Their defence their line speed just shut down everything that the Black Ferns were doing. That classy little scrum half was rattled and was getting things wrong and was being harried. And then when they had the chances to take tries, they really did take them. Yeah. And having been introduced to this tournament in the context of complaints about very valid and still true complaints about the setup and
how organisation,
how it was being structured and everything else
about
it. Fans
bringing their own chairs, dressing rooms being a shed with a portal.
Everything about it being done wrong. The actual rugby on the field has been nothing. The
women
but
are
a
actually
treat.
just delivering.
Nothing but a treat.
They are the 5 best teams in the world, and they're awesome for it. And
my goodness, great. England have come back. That I see anyway.
Is that 18?
18-17 to France, where it was 18-5.
Is that full-time score?
No. 2018, England won.
England getting the job done.
Forgive my partisanship. It was 18-5 to France. We're gonna have to watch that game back. And
we've already spoiled it on ourselves now.
Yeah, it finished 20-18 to England. So
that England team was mighty impressive.
Came back,
yeah,
and that puts them in prime position to win it.
They're going to win it now. Yeah, that's likely the deciding factor because France have it in them to upset them, but that means that's 2 losses on the bounce for France, so they're out of it. Canada have lost twice too.
Black Ferns are the only side that's lost once, so their game against England
becomes crucial.
But that is a massive comeback win for England, and unfortunately we haven't seen how it's played out. Yeah. But this tournament is great. Yeah, it was a great idea on paper when World Rugby announced it and released it. Great idea. Everyone's on board. Everything else that they've done in the context of it has been dreadful.
Yeah, Sky Sports are covering it, which is good on them.
Yeah,
but
everything else, where they've decided to play it, how they've decided to play it, the 4-day turnarounds, which are madness, and probably contributing to some of the up and down nature of the performances.
Yeah, it's very hard to keep that physical toll going. Every week on week, not even week on week, 4 days off. No, it's not enough rest and recovery, as we've said last week. But it's worth reiterating because it is madness, and it was a recurring theme because it happened in the under-20s championship as well. Shouldn't be done with rugby.
They're doing it for understandable reasons, but there needs to be a line drawn in the sand when it comes to rugby union that actually 15's rugby union, especially not to mention 15-man rugby union in 30-degree heat in San Diego does not needs a week-long break between games. Requires it.
They'll give them 4-day turnaround, but every 20 minutes or so they get a water break.
That's nothing at all. So that's definitely a problem, and there's been all kinds of problems, as we know, with the infrastructure and everything else. But on field, this is it. You can't fault
the women for any of that. That's the point. The teams there are class, and the games there have been class.
They've been really, really fun, and like we sort of compared them to the picture of where the women's game is at in terms of having turned professional. Really, only recently. These are really the only pro teams in the game.
Yes,
playing now at the moment. And
which makes this probably the only professional international championship that you
can make. And in that context, we're getting a picture of sort of like early era professional rugby or noughties kind of rugby,
early noughties rugby,
and just getting so many throwbacks to that kind of play with the pylons of the rucks. This sort of the curious shape that they're taking, this sort of primitive but still pretty cool old school backline moves, and then France shocking New Zealand.
Another throwback to New Zealand cruising towards victory until France come out of nowhere and beat them, which is also very reminiscent.
England with now back-to-back clutch 1-score wins from behind. That's huge, and that's a sign of them being probably just the most clinical and the most professional team in the comp. And Emily Scarlett and the girls will be quietly confident going into that game with the Black Ferns. I dare say they will be. Mind you, New Zealand backlash is another thing. If we're talking throwback years, you never want to be. Usually, when they lose to France, they don't get to play the next week. Yeah, that's true. They have to wait till June of next year. Sit on it and stew. And it does. They do, because it's a miserable feeling. But I'm excited for that game too, because it's an awesome fixture between what we were billing beforehand as probably the 2 best teams in the world. The league table is kind of reflecting that, but the competitiveness of France and Canada. Well, I always knew that this France side are right up there. But that this year they just haven't been quite hitting the heights that they're capable of, and therefore have kind of been left in England's shadow in the Six Nations. That was the story anyway. But they were still head and shoulders above everyone else in that competition. But it's been the emergence of Canada as a genuine awesome team. Their pack looked great with another style. But that's the beauty of this tournament, because I just typically wouldn't get to see Canada play, not until really the World Cup comes around. Then I get to see Canada and realise they're class. But if this can become a better organised, regular fit part of the rugby calendar for the women, that makes professionalism all the more viable, but it also makes the product more sellable, marketable, because it's just, these are awesome games, and these are the best at this game in the world altogether. Which is why it's to dampen it a little bit, it is a failure that a product this marketable, that is delivering to the extent that it is isn't being absorbed
It's just
by
not
nearly
being
as many
given,
people.
Yeah, it's not being given a chance. Not
Well,
being
it needs
given a
to be
fair
marketed.
shake.
It's marketable, but it needs to be marketed, and that's the point. Is that to set up the tournament's a great idea, but World Rugby, they're great for great ideas, and they're horrendous for putting money behind them.
Yeah,
and that's just it. But you got to spend money to make money, as they say. And if they marketed it and put it in a proper stadium, and
it would be better placed in Suva. You know, like it would be better placed in Suva than it is there.
Well, that's
even
the point.
though
They want the Americans.
I know they do. They do. But then even then, Texas would make more sense than San Diego, I would say.
Yes, I would agree.
So it's all a bit silly. But like it would be a help if you could just start with a nice pitch with an actual ground behind it, you know, and maybe some dressing rooms for the girls. Like, let's get that much right first, and then market it and try and sell. So
totally.
But yes, that is all throwing shade. That where like it is important to keep harping on that because it should be done better. But one thing that we won't disparage at all is just being the effort and the play from all the teams in it, and they're all
proven. Women's 15s is on the rise. There's a lot of good work being done. There's a lot of really classy, talented players out there, and while it is a possibility that a nation 6 doesn't emerge for some time and that there does develop a gap, right now what we have is a very, very intriguing dynamic playing out between these teams. It is top rugby and a lot of fun to watch.
And it just means as a tournament, it's actually more fun than either the women's Six Nations or what they've got
going down in the rugby championship.
Well, that's probably a bit more competitive, although the Black Ferns do just storm it every year. But I was going to say over the World Cup, because I remember watching the World Cup that was here. That was another mismanaged catastrophe. That was all in the wrong place. That was not organised anywhere near as well. That's a recurring theme. But it was just you were watching blowout after blowout because every team was on a different level. So the whole tournament until you get to like the last 2 rounds, there's no competitive fixtures. Whereas it's every week there's something.
And even so,
happening.
like if Canada and France find themselves on the wrong on either side of the draw and meet someone else from that 5-team grouping, there's some chance that they're not going to see each other at all in the whole tournament. Whereas this is an opportunity to take all those teams, the cream of the crop, and get them all to play each other, which is just great. And as is the way, commendable to World Rugby for putting it on, and a little bit disappointing in terms of how you've gone about it.
Pretty much.
But the show is great, and if you have the means to watch the last round, England against the Black Ferns, that's going to be the game to decide it. And if you have the means to watch it, absolutely do so.
France v USA is the other fixture yet to happen, which I suspect.
And USA Canada's happening tonight.
Yeah, which I would imagine Canada will win, but I don't know. Like USA have looked comfortably 5th best of these teams.
It would be a disservice to themselves, Canada, because they've beaten France very well. They got beat by the Black Ferns. They came tantalisingly close to beating England, but lost that game by a score. This is their last game this evening.
Which
they brought so much to the tournament.
Who knows how much of a physical toll it's taken? They are a physical team that do things up front first. So it's
with fixture lists as condensed as this, it's always better to have your bye round in the middle somewhere, as opposed to like they have a bye weekend in the last weekend or the last round.
Yeah, so this could be a chance for the USA to get some points on the board.
This is their 4th game in 16 days.
So that's really not on. It's a crazy ask, to be honest. Like best of luck to them. They are good value for it. I will be up for them against USA, because even though it's like it's a bit cruel to have the US lose all their games, they've kind of deserved
and
that.
Canada
have 100% added value. That win against France was great. It was a great contest as well, because they were the more organised set piece driven team, whereas France probably showed a little bit more talent 1 through 15 in terms of when the ball's in open space, we know what we were doing, but it was the organisation of the Canadians and the physicality of the Canadians. So their ability to win collisions was awesome. But that's the kind of stuff that suffers with these quick turnaround games. You'll suddenly see some of those players that were running over the French ladies being a bit of a shadow themselves, maybe, because that tends to happen in those quick turnarounds in tournaments. There's always one game that the performance just dips, and it's inevitable because you're exhausted.
Well, hopefully the
not.
Canadian girls can pull one out this evening, and begrudging congrats, but not really. Congrats to England, who are right now looking like the best team in the world on what I assume was a great comeback win against France.
So I suppose we'll move on to, we have it's kind of a special segment for this week, but it was meant to be on last week, although we just didn't have time, as it turned out. We had to do a kind of an abridged one, But they're not coming in new laws now, but there are new law considerations that World Rugby have put forward.
Right.
They're basically a few little changes that are to be discussed. I think there's a meeting that's happening in. There
was a meeting that happened,
happening.
On June 26th. We haven't heard the findings of it, and I don't know that anything has been
set in stone.
Yeah. But the June 26th meeting is where it was making news, and no news has emerged from it as of yet.
Yeah.
But there was a meeting in Marcoussis in France. And there were sort of delegates and all sorts of official heads at it, and they were going over a load of data and going over new rules and laws that they were going to bring in.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read here. Headline game. This is just taken from an article done by, I think, Ultimate Rugby. It says headline game analysis data confirmed ball and play time in rugby has increased by up to 50% since 1987.
Right.
There are greater increases in the Northern Hemisphere competitions. The number of tackles per game has increased by 252% over the same time period.
Yeah.
Scrums have decreased by 56%. The tackle accounts for 50% of all injuries and 76% of all concussions. And 72% of concussions in the tackle are occurring to the tackler.
Yeah.
The group then considered evidence-based ways to reduce injuries in the tackles, resulting in a number of recommendations to consider within the law amendment process.
Right.
And so here are the sort of headline, I think there's 6 proposals, and we'll just read them out and then go through them.
Sure.
So the first is the much discussed 50-22 kick proposal. Which, the ruling would be that if you kick the ball from I think it's
inside your own half to bounce and go out in the opposing 22, which is a rule that does exist in rugby league. Yes. It means that you then get the put into the subsequent line out.
But if you kick it from your opposition half and it goes into touch, it's still the opposition line out. And if you kick it from your own half and it goes into touch but not in the opposition 22, it's still the opponent line out. And it is, as you say, a rule in rugby league. The idea, I suppose, is to get defensive lines to respect the weapon that a kick could be. Have to put more players in the back
punishing the bad habits of Welsh wingers.
Ooh, there you go.
Just a little bit of ball watching that leads to you creeping up into the line. It's punishing it. Is the idea of it. And I'm in two minds with it. I don't hate it as a proposal at all.
I don't hate it.
It's not unprecedented to change these laws around things. Obviously, like the 22, you kicking out of from your own 22 from a free kick net, that used to be permissible.
There's all kinds of things that have drastically changed the way the game is played. This would be one, no question. This would drastically change the dynamics at play when a team has the ball in their own half. But perhaps not for the worse.
A lot of old players from the amateur era are bemoaning just some of how defensive systems work now, where there's less Serge Blanco 1-on-1, that just isn't a picture. It's not 15 going against 15 and who's going to get the better of that exchange. No, Serge Blanco is now being guided into the channel where we want him, where our flanker is there covering it.
Matt Todd's so
that the game has changed in that regard. So to create a bit more space by having wingers have to be a bit more disciplined if that kick is on. It also means that that a probing attacking kick for territory, which is something that it's definitely diminished. It does still happen sometimes.
The Ronan
O'Gara special, that model of out half where you're always looking for that probing little kick and where the wingers are. It's kind of dwindled a bit in the game, and some defensive systems have come up like Ireland with one sweeper in the backfield and one winger dropping back to help cover with 13 men up in the line. Makes a very intimidating wall that's very, very tough and physical to break down. And if the talk is like all those stats you were talking about, the increased number in tackles, the increased number of time in ball and play, and you're thinking like a team like Ireland, as to carry on that example, who are just going to go ruck 40 phases, making you make all those tackles. It's worthy of consideration.
So perhaps even without the law changes, the game has pivoted from where it was to where it is, just with more and more intricate coaching, and more sort of athletic players, that they've managed to manufacture a look to the game that is actually quite different from what it was, even with the same laws around this sort of open play. This would be a very different law, but it might recreate a more old school look.
Potentially, and that's certainly what I read into it in terms of,
and just it's decreasing the number of tackles.
That's true.
It's an idea to do that, and I think from a game perspective, it's going to create all kinds of intrigue, because that skill is joyous when it's done well. It's a great part of the game.
You better believe that would mean next season, if that comes in next season in Super Rugby, you're going to see a Brumbies team with a 10 who's going to be kicking from his own half all day long. Going to be looking for that.
The Brumbies could be, if they could find a 10. Like, I don't know if Leia Lafano has it in them to do that, the Raj thing, but if they could find a 10 who could do that, they would become unstoppable, because that's all their game was about, is creating those attacking lineouts.
This is it, so it's a cool. I think that's a potentially cool idea. I wouldn't mind seeing it on a trial basis in one competition, to just to see how it works dynamically and how teams adjust to it. But that's one I don't have a real problem with. There are the other ones here, the reduction in the number of permitted substitutions, which is one that I do have a problem with.
Well, I just haven't heard an explanation for why it would be a good thing.
Well, all I can reason is a kind of an argument that I've heard put forward, which I kind of do buy as well, is that the fact that they're now you're allowed to use all your 8 subs means that the focus has shifted. Like in the amateur days, there used to even be subs, then subs were allowed subsequently just for injury, and then finally tactical subs. But now you're having a position where it's like it's a little tidbit, it's a little soundbite you hear in interviews, like it's not a 15-man game, it's a 23-man game. And the fact of it being a 23-man game, coupled with all of those stats you're saying, ball in play much longer, more tackles, more physical players, heavier players, it just means that at the 60-minute mark, when there are tired bodies everywhere and a bit of fatigued decision making going on the pitch, there are fresh monsters coming on to that pitch, and more collisions that are intense. So that's I would imagine the rationale, but I do disagree with it, because I think the presence of all of those substitutions, the ability to bring them on and off, is what helps with those injury profiles anyway. So
otherwise you're going to have guys force themselves to stay on, and that's obviously a bad thing.
People feel like their knee or tendon or something is going, but they're going to have to hobble on and go a bit longer.
And even so, guys will just have to play through fatigue and fatigue. Like, you can't. Like, this is the problem with statifying everything, is that you can't necessarily test fatigue, so it's a data point that's missing from all of this. But I'd say fatigue massively contributes to concussion and the like.
Well, considering you're talking about the 72% of concussions coming from the tackled player. If you're tackling it's the tackler. It's the coming from a tackler. That's what I mean.
He's getting the concussion.
He's getting the concussion, and it's like your tackle technique gets sloppy if it's your 23rd tackle in a 60-minute period. Like, you're going to go in there a bit more floundering and maybe catch a knee.
That's exactly right, and that's a data point that's missing from that. That's an element that. That's why I would hope that there were smart heads in that room lobbying against that proposal for that exact reason.
I would hope that point was made anyway, because it does feel like the reason that I illustrated is just apropos of nothing. Like, you're saying rightly that I haven't heard what the rationale is, but that's what I'm assuming it is. And I think it's moot, because I think there are more counterpoints. Most namely, that is just you want to be able to spot players that need to be rotated out, and plus things like what the front row have to do now, with the amount of work that the pack do for the first 60 minutes and the general fitness of them. You need to be replacing props at 60 minutes, because otherwise things like scrums become dangerous as well, because they're fatigued props trying to hold the weight of like 16 massive men in there, and it's like that's also a recipe for disaster potentially. I disagree with that one more so than the 50-22. That's one that I would have a problem with, is if they augmented that. The next one there, you can read it out.
Well, I'm just trying to figure it out here. In fact, the off feet at the ruck, players must leave the ball, which I'm pretty sure was already the law. So they say creates a greater contest at the ruck to speed up ball availability. Looking at these other points, I think it's more trying to find laws around these points, so they're more headlines than anything else. But I think the idea is that an offensive player who doesn't necessarily dive over the top but loses his feet at the ruck in some way. You often see guys, but I feel like this is illegal already. But
it feels like it is, but they get away with it. Like I've seen it happen before, where like a guy's off his feet at the a guy's going for the ball, say on the defensive breakdown, loses his foot, like takes a knee. The ref says hands off, but as he's saying like hands, your man does actually rip the ball, so that brings it back to his side even though he said hands off. And then another player in the ruck from the offensive side sees that as an affront, gets in there, is off his feet, and then throws it back on his side, and the ref kind of goes, play on. Because it's like, well, that's a fair enough result, even though both of them were actually illegal.
I get that as common sense refereeing. Yeah. I think I don't have too much of a problem with that. What I think this is addressing is, guys, it's illegal to dive off your feet, but it's not illegal to lose your footing in a ruck. If you're clearing out a guy and you clear him out and then you lose your footing, that's genuine rucking. I think what they're saying is that guy needs to sort of leave the ruck to create a greater contest. That you can't then just lie in a position where you're going to prevent any counter rucking. Which
how will that affect the general closing out of games tactic that teams adopt, that we saw the Crusaders doing even last week?
Probably negatively. I would hope so.
Yeah, well, it's like one that Nigel Owens can't abide, and he'll look for any excuse to ping you. If you're setting up pods of 4 forwards to go and flop into a ruck that's uncontestable, he'll pin you
even if he doesn't see anything. He just hates the tactic.
He does, he's like, no, pass the ball.
The fourth headline here is just delaying the movement of the ruck defensive line. So in the defensive line at the ruck, finding a law change they haven't specified here that reduces the line speed of the defence, essentially. So right now, guys are flying up. But I was
enforcing the current offside law would actually do that job.
100%.
Like they're just ignoring it for the last season. So there doesn't really need to be a law change. Just be a bit more stringent on the defensive line. That's something that I feel like the linesman should be calling. That should be the linesman's purview, so that the ref can focus on the ruck and not be pulled and dizzy by that, because the refs often are like, you do see like some awful stuff get overlooked in the ruck while the ref's doing this, and you're just going like this,
and then vice versa. The ref turns around to look at the ruck and
someone comes shooting up,
flying out,
and he's not called because the linesman rarely gets in your ear about an offside or just a slight encroachment, unless it's blatant.
What's definitely true is, as per the definition of offside in the laws at the moment, if you watch most professional rugby games over the last year, both defences have been routinely offside because they're breaking a little early. They're not actually at the hindmost foot,
especially with the new law being that the scrum half, it's not out when it used to be, if your hand is on it, then the offside line is gone, and they can.
But that's not the law anymore.
It's not the law. He has to remove it from the ruck, and they're definitely breaking early from that point. 100%. Exactly. So this is why you're coming up with a new way of phrasing it, or coming up with a new law seems.
Well, it's fine if they can give a directive to referees to just enforce that offside line stringently. That would be great, and hopefully that's what's being discussed here, because it's. I'm glad at least that they're
recognising
addressing
the problem with it. Because it has shut down. It's created a lot of sloppy games, particularly in the wet. When games have gone to that place, it's been pretty hideous sometimes to watch, because the offense just has no way of shutting down that aggressive line speed that is coming from an illegal place. From the current laws that we do have, you're just looking at it going like, well, they're offside, but it's become a moot point.
It has, you don't get to yell offside anymore because everyone's always offside, so forget about it.
It's all just free for all.
And then the fifth and sixth are pretty straightforward. The fifth one is lower the tackle height again. I think they're trying to get this nipple thing going on that we've seen over the last little while.
I still think it's kind of arbitrary and nonsense, but
well, listen, if they want to completely remove everything shoulders up, I understand, but you do have to have the ball playing, ball trapping factor in defences. It's like one of the worst arguments that I've seen is that lowering the tackle height to hip down is going to improve the game because it creates more offloads. that's not going to improve the game. It's going to remove the dynamic at play in terms of stopping teams from offloading it.
Yes.
That's a real dynamic, and there's already great sides that offload, and I would encourage any side that wants to win things to bring an offloading element to their game. But there's also a way to stop it.
Yes.
And that's crucial
like the
to
choke
have that
tackle,
in rugby.
great stuff, beautiful bit of tactics. That's all the double tackle where it's one low, one high. Which is probably something that they're looking at to try and discourage for more reasons than one as far as injury. But it's great like little dynamic. Like how else are you going to stop Leone Nakarawa? Not to say that you're not going to stop him anyway, but you need to have some kind of way
have
to
a fair
challenge
chance.
him. But also challenge him, because as soon as he's challenged, that's when he pulls off the most excellent of offloads. So it's all good to have a little bit of height in it. I understand where they're coming from. I just find like
it's also like they're like, I agree with the new high tackle laws they put out. I'm glad that they finally brought some clarity to that. I think it's great. I like the idea of mitigating and aggravating factors as a concept.
I certainly just know where we stand with that issue now much more than I did. I
think they have it more or less right, and I think what they're struggling with is that they want to every year be sort of implementing a broad plan on concussion. But as their own data points out, it's actually and it's diminishing every year, the idea that it's the tackled player getting the concussion. In fact, more often than not, it's the tackler, and they're going to have to come up with ways to address that as well. And I tell you, the closer you bring the head down to the opponent's knees, those stats aren't going to improve.
No, there's always those guys who run with the knees up style, and they'll knock you clean out if you catch a knee to the face.
Masvidal you to
yes, indeed. Like it's crazy. That's kind of one that like they need to kind of look where the focus is. It's the same. It's the same with some of their dangerous tackle rules, where they're like things like the Danny Cipriani red card earlier on, which ultimately didn't set a precedent. In fact, it made them seem to review things and rein it back in because it was so silly. But it's like, surely
it quietly destroyed Gloucester's season.
It did, but then no one really cared. Apart from Daragh
and
Gloucester fans, I know. But Munster were happy enough about it. But that being so as ridiculous as it was also like to point out that like not only is that tackle like, yes, it's high and its shoulder does make contact with the head, but you need to.
It wasn't a tackle.
It wasn't a tackle. It was a classic number 10 just giving a little. And then ignoring the tackle. But it's also like, if you're really going to rule on dangerous tackles, you need to be looking at things like force. Where is the force coming from? Is the ball carrier bringing all the force, and the tackler, the tackled player or tackling player is just soaking it? And if so, if he goes a bit high, or if the shoulder connects with the head, that's not really a red card offence. Maybe he's just in a scrambling, compromised position because the ball carrier is bringing. Isn't it like? Those kinds of rationales need to be applied.
Dangerously probably is something that they could put a bit more focus on, but I think the new laws do that
a little bit more. But it's just it needs to always be zeroed back down to like, is this dangerous? Where's the danger coming from in this scenario, rather than shoulder to the head is red. Like it's not as clear cut as that, because the Cipriani example, that's a shoulder to the head, that's so far from a red card. And then later in that game, a tackle, like literally a few minutes later, a tackle much worse that was much more dangerous, but although it didn't quite get to the head, that was a yellow card for that arbitrary reason. So it's like with this kind of law as well, the tackle height, lowering the tackle height to below the nipple is kind of just an oddly specific thing that's going to have a load of video ref stuff of guys just looking at it for 5 minutes going like, is it the nipple? I can't actually see his nipple through the shirt. So
and then they're going to have to design these shirts with
a little thing on it.
It's going to be a complete mess.
So I don't like the arbitrary pointing of a thing like that, when I really would rather trust the refs to apply the laws as they are now, with just a few guidelines on where's the danger element,
and figure out creative ways, as they're doing, to reduce the number of tackles in a game. Then finally they're just proposing the ability to review a yellow card with a mind to maybe turning it into a red card while the player is in the bin, that there can be
or perhaps overruling the sin binning. I don't know if that's on the cards.
I don't think so, but it's kind of okay, fine. I mean, if it speeds up the game, fine. If they have to call it to a halt to re-review it, like the only way that's going to work is if the TMO has license to overrule the ref's decision in that context,
which is it's not a bridge we've crossed yet, and that's probably rightly so. I like the referee's decision. I like there at least being in that collection of heads, there at least being someone with final say, even though in some little combinations of officials that's not always the case, and you see some very passive refs not using the technology correctly at all.
So what are you seeing here?
What do you see? That kind of really doubtful, non-decisive stuff coming from the ref, and then the ref sometimes just being guided. Like occasionally, it's the right decision that the video ref is pointing out to the ref as the ref is saying some absolute gibberish that he's like trying to coerce him into making the right call instead of this ridiculous one he just proposed. As funny as that sometimes is, I would like more competent refs with a bit more of an instinct to just use the technology and just get it sorted quickly.
That's the point, like, is that when the ref has the sort of absolute say, it can become a case of just really taking forever about it. But that said, that's more of a technical thing. There's no real specifics there, so maybe they will, maybe they won't. That's not really as interesting a dynamic as the likes of the 50-22.
The 50-22 is more of a game changer in every sense of the word.
And perhaps a very good one.
I'm certainly not. I'm not decrying it. I'm
loving the evolution of tactical kickers. Developing a left foot and a right foot, and I think this is only going to improve that in terms of catching out the back three.
That whole game. It's like that was something actually in an interview with Joey Carberry where he pointed that out. He was saying how he wants that to be a part of his game now that he switched to 10, because he remembers playing at fullback just a nightmare when an out half or the tactical kicker had 2 feet and was kicking off 2 feet. It just became an impossible task to cover every bit of space in the backfield. And if with this kind of rule change or law change coming in, it adds so much scope for just more skills. And I love things like the spiral kick that we just don't see anymore, that is actually a more accurate precision, like a quicker way to find that or to get to that gap, as opposed to like when you look at the Richie Mo'unga is an excellent kicker of a ball, Lima Sopoaga, who you would constantly criticise as, and you're right, his crossfield kicks are too floated. So you spot the space as he does, and it's like, oh, crossfield kick's on here, it's on, and he drops it on the toe, and it's like, oh yes, what a kick. And it just hangs in the air for around 2 seconds too long, and suddenly it's intercepted and it's going. It's a try the other way. With the ball flight of the spiral kick, it means that it's actually got a dip on it. So it means that if the gap is there and you kick an accurate spiral kick as opposed to an end over an end, it's going to get there quicker and going to bounce forward when it gets there. So it's a good part of the game that we don't really see as much.
It'll be more intelligent, tactical, accurate kicking is going to be incentivized if this law comes through. And kicking, like aimless kicking, can be one of the most tedious things to watch.
Well, the whole kick tennis thing that did happen when the 22 carried back rule came in for the first few seasons of that. That was torture.
It was torture, but great kicking can be a really, really cool element of what the game is, and would be super interesting to see. And then all of a sudden, instead of having 40 phases in the middle of the field followed by a knock on and a scrum, which includes 40 tackles, 40 phases, 40 tackles. All of a sudden it's a kick to the corner and then a line out and then a maul, and then maybe a team turns it over and it's an exit, and all of a sudden we've gone 5 or 6 minutes and there hasn't been a tackle, and all of a sudden that's something that they would like to see, is those dynamics play out. Just other elements to the game rather than just phase play, set pieces and attacks and exits and all that kind of thing.
For sure. So it's definitely interesting times. I wonder where they stand with all that. But we'll leave that there and move on to our last section of the week, which is the rugby news of the week, as is normal, as is tradition. This week there were a fair few headlines. The first one I'm gonna make is actually a new law that has come straight in, just to kind of carry on from that discussion. Was they've now, effective immediately, changed the law to prevent your hooker on the between bind and set in scrum calls. Those calls. The hooker on either side is not allowed. It's what is it called? Axial loading is what they call it, where essentially he puts his weight on, or part of his weight on the opposition hooker, so as to kind of have the whole pack's weight on him before the scrum starts for a moment to throw him, and then it's suspected that causes a lot more injuries when scrums do collapse, that kind of behaviour.
Yeah.
So they're like, it's going to be a zero tolerance thing. It's going to have the same rules as your crooked feed, where the first one is a free kick, and then it exacerbates there. If you do it again, penalty. Do it too many times, potential cards.
Yeah, I like this rule change
straight away.
Anything that advocates pure scrummaging and less fiddly sticks is good.
Yeah. Fiddly sticks, by the way, is our term for all the nonsense and dark arts that
Martin Castrogiovanni.
Yes, in the front row divilment that does end up happening, and the reason resets tend to happen when you have passive refs who don't know what they're doing.
Exactly. Let's have pure scrums. Let's be fair. Nobody's putting any weight in anyone else until set happens. Yeah, and then from there, let the dynamics play out between the two front rows and the two packs as a whole. So this is sort of a common sense one to prevent.
It's another one with injury in mind. And
the only side effect of that is going to be better, more pure scrummaging. So
you would think so. Yeah.
Happy days.
Yeah. So with that one out of the way. A few other signing stuff.
I want to headline with Alun Wyn Jones, who's the man of the moment at the moment.
He's awesome.
Rugby world's best player in the world right now, and
tough to argue.
Indeed.
He's an awesome man. He's 33 now, but he's signed on through 2021
with the Welsh Rugby Union. He's staying there.
He ain't going nowhere.
That's incredible.
Did his little Wolf of Wall Street bit, and he ain't going nowhere.
That's incredible.
Until they drag him out there.
It's incredible that he hasn't been. Well, maybe he's been tempted, but that the temptation hasn't given out, and he's going to stay with Welsh Rugby.
Sure, there was all kinds of chat after the Six Nations about where he was going to go, and there was all kinds of proposals, and
came up, and all this loads of money being fired in his general direction. But he's staying on with the Ospreys and Wales until 2021. And then probably at that age that he'd be 35 at the time, that he may move on after that, but probably not until after the Lions tour.
Fourth Lions tour for him. He'd be
a rather exclusive club.
He'd be among the all-time greats, as he already is.
Yeah.
But that probably is what he's targeting, obviously, with that contract being signed. He also probably wants to be there for his beloved Ospreys to help him in the pool of death tomorrow or next year, or even later this year.
They don't deserve him.
They really don't. Like, he is a man he is much more than an Osprey. He is Welsh legend, and it is good news in terms of the precedent and the Welsh Rugby Union central contracts. They want their top players leading by example on that front and trying to make this more viable as a kind of a domestic, because it still has yet to happen in the professional area that their domestic form reflects even anywhere near their potential, but also what their
that was my point. Alun Wyn Jones is one guy who's never given anything but his all in an Ospreys shirt, and routinely gets let down and owes them nothing, which makes this move all the more impressive and a real sign of faith in the institution that is Welsh Rugby, and a great example for the younger guys to look up to. So can you respect the guy more? I don't know that you can.
I don't know. I don't know that you can. Pretty awesome all round.
I would be a bit sickened if Wales won the World Cup, if I'm perfectly honest, but it would be a great silver lining to see him lift the Webb Ellis Trophy, because there's probably no man more deserving.
Absolutely true. Just we wish him well, because I know the Ospreys, I can't imagine it's the most glamorous of teams to be a part of, but he is Mr. Welsh Rugby, and he's there to stay, and he's there for them, and I'm sure Gats is delighted with it. I'm sure all the Ospreys fans are delighted with it. I know Squidge Rugby's probably delighted. But fair play to him. I just admire the hell out of that guy, and after the year he's had, that's a really impressive sign of faith in Welsh Rugby for years to come.
The San Diego Legion, not to be undone by Rugby United New York, who are getting all the signings, have managed a little coup themselves.
Stefan
Armitage, who has been injured. He's been in and out of the game. He hasn't been quite the force that he was. He's
another one in that Sean O'Brien bracket who was so physical in how he played the game that once they reach their 30s, you're kind of wondering, can you keep going at the same level? But with that being said, the MLR doesn't have the same physical toll to it as
if Sean O'Brien was going there, you'd be a little okay.
He'll be doing fine over there. And coming from the top couture, which is super competitive week on week, and it's very, very physical, he'll probably light it up.
Yeah,
he'll be a good asset for that Legion team that were so close this year.
Yeah.
So they're hoping to build something for next year.
Yeah, so it's a great signing, and just if he hits anything like his form, he's another guy who has the potential to be sort of box office. And really get the American market to fall in love with the poaching element of the game.
That's true.
To get a real Pocock style poacher in there to actually just all of these pictures that we've been creating in Seattle with our beautiful attacking rugby are being undone by an elite poacher.
Yeah,
he's just everywhere and he's stealing the ball, and it's just a whole new dynamic.
Yeah, which is it's cool because it's such a new tournament that it's going to go through all those evolutions anyway.
Yeah.
So it needs a few marquee players to show them how it's done, I suppose.
Ruan Pienaar is the other signing. Age 35 is
returning to the Pro 14.
Yeah,
but not to Ulster.
No,
which he probably would have liked, but no, it's the Cheetahs on a 2-year deal.
Going to Bloemfontein, play for the Free State, and good for him. He's also going to be playing the Currie Cup rugby.
That's cool. Yeah. Like he's a legend of the game at this point. Like he's been awesome.
It's a great signing for the Cheetahs. Just that little bit of control to
probably
what
they're lacking. Like it probably will mean they're a little bit slower than they are, but it's I don't know. It's a curious one. Like I'm curious to see how that team evolves, because obviously their first year they burst onto the scene in the Pro 14
and shocked a few teams.
Yeah, the pace of their play was a challenge for a lot of the teams there, and then they kind of got figured out a little bit subsequently. And this year, kind of they bubbled down to about where I think their level is anyway. And even based on their Super Rugby pedigree prior to it, you were thinking like these aren't the elite South African teams we're getting, but. With that being said, they've bought into this Pro 14. They're good value for it, and in it they've already made.
They're excited to play in it.
Exactly,
and making some key signings.
Well, this is it. Like that's a pretty marquee guy to bring into the club, and hopefully it'll be a good.
And he's going to get to come back to Ravenhill and
I wonder if that's the case now. Like because I know it's potentially possible if they're in a different conference that
they're in the same conference. Are they? Do we have the Kings? I think we have the Cheetahs this time around. Yeah. And we're with Ulster.
Oh, that's right, actually. So there will be a home and away. So he will, make the Ravenhill return that he is overdue for, and he'll get a lovely reception, no doubt. So
yes.
That's a nice little subplot of next season.
Yeah. Another subplot of next season is that Clermont have been doing some strategic signings, given the how bare bones they're going to be when the Top Couture kicks off as the World Cup is happening. They've added 4 players. JJ Engelbrecht, who capped Springbok centre but isn't going to be in the team this time around. Rudy Page to cover scrum half, but their 2 scrummies gone.
Yes.
And then bath prop Max Lahef and international Faifili Levave, Samoan international that is.
Right.
Those guys are going to be covering some of their empty positions, and it's a bit of strategic work. I'm curious to see how it looks. Rudy Page in particular can be up and down.
Yes, he can. Literally up or down. The pass can go anywhere.
It's good to see them doing some strategic signing.
Definitely.
To manage.
They're going to be gutted by both France and then obviously Scotland. Some of their key playmakers as well. They're as affected as any club, so it makes good sense that they'd be trying to poach a few players now before any rugby championship stuff happens.
Get your hands on some free agents. Guys who aren't going to be playing in the World Cup, who are done playing Super Rugby, who are looking for somewhere to go.
I just had a funny thought of Ben Teo in a Clermont jersey.
No. He is playing in the World Cup.
I know he is. You just when you said the word free agent, that's what popped into my head. That would be disastrous. But no, that's not going to happen.
So that's a picture of some good savvy signing there from them. And I'd say JJ Engelbrecht is a proper rugby player, so he's gonna be good value.
He'd be robust. You would trust that centre.
So those are the signings. The other news, which has just emerged today, is that an independent, not independent as in an independent journalist, The Independent, the Irish Independent, that is reporting that Sexton has a fractured thumb. Johnny Sexton,
which means 6 to 8 weeks was what I read.
And they buried that just like we did. They buried the time length right at the bottom of that story when I was listening to it on the radio, and I was like, oh my god. It's not gone for the World Cup. So that's a fair old stint out.
It is in World Cup prep time, but
we've seen that with Johnny before. This is the cotton wool treatment.
It is.
I'm gonna dial the alarm right to zero, right down to zero. This is Johnny management in play. He probably does have his fractured thumb. They'll let that heal. He'll probably heal in 4 weeks, and then they'll give him another 4.
Yeah.
Johnny is as versed as any player in coming in for the big occasion.
Yeah.
He doesn't need nearly as much as a lot of guys. He doesn't really need that run-in period.
No, not as much. And it's probably...
I think there's an argument for not playing Sexton in any of the World Cup warm-ups.
Possible, because the risk-reward ratio is certainly kind of skewed against it.
Yeah.
Because if he gets enough and goes down...
He needs to have one performance against Scotland, and then he's going to have games against, lesser Tier 2 opposition, which are important, but, he doesn't need to play Wales and England and Wales again to get ready for that Scotland game. That's only going to hurt him. Yeah,
it's true. I can think of 2 teams no more likely to injure Johnny Sexton than
France,
those 2.
Come on, they're top of the pile.
Well,
they have a track record.
They do. They love getting a shot in on it. But then so does everyone. And it's it seems risky to be playing him in any of them. But this essentially means it's a protracted rest period for Sexton, which was what we were expecting anyway.
Yeah.
But it is obviously a bit of a bummer. Having a broken thumb is not ideal in anyone's plans this side of the World Cup, but it could be much worse. It could have been a broken arm, it could have been a cruciate, it could have been anything. And we've already seen the likes of DMAC not in the World Cup. We've seen some, from an Irish point of view, you have the likes of Josh van der Fleer, Dan Levy struggling with that kind of stuff. So this is not the disaster that it certainly was reported as. It is a bit of a bummer, but he's still in World Cup mode, so it's fine. Is my ultimate take on that.
Then just a final note, a couple of notes. The Curry Cup is getting underway this weekend. If you are starved of rugby and haven't got the means or aren't in a fortuitous time zone to watch the Fiji Maori game, do your best to watch that if you're watching nothing else this weekend. But the Curry Cup is kicking off. It's always a fun tournament.
And this year has the addition of, Aru and Pienaar now, but also a Argentina 15 or a Jaguares 15, which we were saying last week is an exciting new element to what is one of the great old tournaments in the rugby world. So it's I think it's exciting. The Curry Cup, worth a watch. You will definitely be tuning into a few games.
Get to see the Greekas. We never watched the Greekas.
Yeah, this is it.
What are the Greekas like?
Yeah.
I'm excited to find out.
And just one other note that I saw there is that actually one member of, speaking of sticking with Springbok Rugby and the Curry Cup, is that one member of the another member of the 95 World Cup winning team, I think it was James, what's his name there?
James Small.
James Small, that's right. Has died at the age of 50, which is very, very sad and very, very young for anyone to be dying. I think he's the 4th member of that squad apparently to have passed away. So our condolences and rest in peace. And obviously a legend of the game and just another part of that fantastic team who then that fantastic year and just that wonderful story that
brought about that changed this country's rugby legacy from one of
institutional racism to actually overcoming
to being a weapon against racism as it is to this day. And a legendary team and terribly sad news and
condolences and commiseration to his family as well and all that, of course.
Exactly. So a bit of a dampener note and to end the show on, but the other thing I was going to say was that the under 20 trophy got underway. The under 20 trophy I had forgotten about.
That was, I'm going to leave that to last, but yes, the under 20 trophy, obviously the tier below the under 20 World Championship, and the prize being the winner of this gets into that championship next year, which is a great comp to get into, and for all of these tier 2 teams, it is quite a carrot to go for.
Yeah, there's going to be 3 tier 2 teams in the actual World Championship. Under 20 championships next year.
Gone down.
Scotland are going to be playing in this tournament next year. It's just two teams of 4. It's already gotten underway. It looks like it's literally just 2 pools of 4, and the winner of each pool plays each other for it.
There you go.
So there's no knockout except for the final. So it looks like it's going to be either Uruguay and Japan playing probably Tonga, because Tonga beat Canada, who are the other big team in that group, and that game's already happened. So it looks like it's going to be between Tonga, Uruguay, and Japan, with a real outside possibility of Portugal. But probably
I don't know much about Portuguese rugby or Portuguese under-20s rugby, but it would be interesting.
I think they played their opening game against Hong Kong, and that's why
they got a bonus point win to pad the stats a little in their favour.
Yeah.
But it is only round 1. But yeah, I suspect Tonga are probably well up there in terms of just even physicality at that level, at under 20 level. Some of those big Tongans.
Hey, listen, the Uruguayans and the Japans certainly at senior level can play ball.
True.
And so you would suspect that any one of those teams will be valued to the championship if they get in it.
100%. So it's an interesting little dynamic, and obviously another good tournament. And that whole under 20s dynamic, I think, is just great. And
totally.
Long may it rain. The only little gripe we have is about the short turnaround, which we were obviously saying throughout the show, but that is something that's it doesn't really dampen what a great tournament it is, and what a great opportunity it is for a lot of those kids, because like, as much as it is a great way to spot the upcoming talent that's going to filter through and be amazing in years to come in senior side, it also represents for the majority of the players in that tournament, not that, but probably the only time and last time you'll get to represent your country in a professional-ish kind of capacity in
not professional-ish. Well, I mean, it's this is your elite capacity at that level.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you're absolutely right. That's a massive thing, and there are guys. It's a competition that means something in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I would say even more so for these Uruguayan kids.
Yeah, 100%. Like it may be the tier 2 comp at the under 20 level, but the prize of paving the way for the next generation.
Yeah, it's a curious dynamic, isn't it? I mean, like the guys who are obviously not going to be qualified to play under 20s next year are really playing for the next guys. They're not going to get to play in this tournament, but they're playing.
The next guys might be really annoyed at them, going like, "Oh, we're getting hammered in every game." Maybe if we were in the lower comp,
you want to be there.
You want to face
the haka.
You do. Yeah. It's what all teams, all of those tier 2 teams are aspiring towards. The one day we'll be up there and competitive, and
we'll be standing in unison opposite the haka.
Yeah,
that's the dream. For all of those teams, and that's part of what they're playing for. So long may it rain. It has been it's a quiet enough time for rugby, but there is rugby going on.
True.
All you have to do is look, and we are bubbling ever so closely to test footy in the World Cup. True. And that's very much where the headspace is. But congratulations ultimately to the Crusaders.
3 in a row, 10 overall. It's a big don't argue, and like Scott Robertson, the genius that is, he is a wizard, really.
And that whole coaching ticket, very smart heads together.
100%. Ronan O'Gara off to La Rochelle. That's exciting times dynamically. And off with an unblemished Southern Hemisphere record, which is hilarious. 2 from 2. Yeah.
As you do.
Yeah. And Brad Moore as well, another legend of the game. Absolutely. Congrats to the Crusaders. They've thoroughly deserved it over the last 3 years, and that they were very impressive in how they shut down what was the worthy challengers on the balance of the year. The Jags were fantastic. It's their best year ever since their inception.
I don't think they let themselves down either.
They got literally, the game just got taken away from them by a savvy Crusaders team that knew exactly how to unstick them, and it was a frustrating day for the Crusaders, for the Jags. But it's coming off 2 fantastic weeks in their home stadium that has never looked as full as it did, and the atmosphere was there. They had a competitive one against the Chiefs. They had a lovely blowout against the Brumbies where it was festival time, and it didn't even care that it was a blowout. Another try, and the crowd loving it. All of these are great pictures for Super Rugby, because just things like crowd dynamic and stuff. The Argentinians have arrived.
The Jags are bringing it.
Jags are finally bringing it.
They were
always
Jags fans in Christchurch.
There were, they're buying into it, which is only good for Super Rugby. But the ultimate highlight is Crusaders.
Absolutely.
Don't argue. Best team in the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah. And that's it.
And listen, we'll be back next week. We'll be talking about the Rugby Championship. And
more Southern Hemisphere rugby. It's getting all serious now.
It's getting very serious. We're looking forward to it. Until then, see you.
Yeah, peace. Bye.
Bye.
Cool, you're up.
Yes. I got it.
Well, I know. You got it.
Hey, there we go.
2 from 2.
I got Bill Clinton.
Yeah.